Well, we've only done this a couple of times, so I'm not actually interviewing a guest today. So, welcome to the line. My name is Joshua Malott. I'm the chairman and CEO of Blackline. We build brands and help build culture and invest in people and leadership, specifically in the trades industries. If you're listening to this podcast and you're someone who has been listening, then you know some of that, and you know that we really like honest conversation, and we want to be about lifting the view of the skilled trades. More specifically, I want to talk to you today about how we do that and what it means to tell a story. The other week I was on a conference call, and I was talking with a gentleman. He was a landman, and talking with him about how story aligns you with the people that you want in your organization and the clients that you want in your organization. At least that's been my experience. Because when you communicate who you are and what you're about, it attracts others that are like-minded. And so in today's episode, I want to talk to you about something new that we're doing here at Blackline to help tell the stories of the men and women who are doing the work. So hopefully I pull this off right. I'm used to sitting down and having a conversation with someone, but today I want to have a conversation with you. So here it goes. One of the things that we're doing here, and if you follow us online, you might have seen this, Trademark magazine. And we call it Trademark a work magazine. And this is Blackline's 2026 experiment. You know, you can see it on camera here, and I don't know, you might be able to hear the papers on if you're listening in your truck to the podcast. But this newspaper style magazine is something that we're not publishing online. We're not communicating or even showing you what's in it online, except for what you might see here today. But it's something that you have to read it. You have to turn the pages. You can touch it, you can feel it, and you can smell it. And in this first issue, it's titled, Leave Your Mark. And the reason that we are talking about this is because leaving our mark in an industry is something important. And it is deep in our origins as a country. Stonemasons, blacksmiths, silversmiths, all of those trades left their mark so that you would know who it was that did the work. And the question is why? Why was that important? And why is it still important? Because when you leave your mark on something, you're saying, I stand behind it. You stand behind your brand. You stand behind your story. You stand behind your company. And we want to talk about some of that today. And that's also why I'm sitting here like this. I'm actually wearing a t-shirt. I don't usually wear t-shirts. I don't know if you can see this or not, but I'm wearing a brand mark of the company and the gentleman that's in the story in this magazine here that we're trying to tell. And my reason for that is we believe these are stories that deserve to be told. You know, if you're listening to this and you're driving to work and you're an operator, a miner, an electrician, a plumber, a drywaller, a carpenter, we want to tell your story because we think that it's something that matters. When I was a young man, my dad used to take me to work with him, and the day would start by going out to breakfast and sitting there and having coffee and talking with the men and women who do the work. Now, if I'm being really honest, back then, it was pretty much all old men. But we're building a new industry. And that's what Blackline wants to be about with you, is building a new industry, being intentional about the mark that you leave. So in these issues that we bring out this year in Trademark Mag, we are bringing out 4 issues, one each quarter. Our first one is out right now. And our goal is to tell the stories through print and writing and sharing high quality photographs that communicate the spirit of the work that's being done. Recently, I was writing a post and talking about what we're doing with this magazine, and I was reminded of Native Americans who, the story goes that some of them believe that a photograph could steal their soul. And the reality is there are some tribes, even in South America to this day, that actually still believe that. And so I would like to believe that there is a piece of truth in that. Not that a photograph steals your soul, but that it can capture the spirit of what is happening, the work that's being done, and it can cut out the noise. I love video, and we do that a lot for our clients, and I enjoy a good video as much as the next guy. But the reality is a photograph quiets things down, and it communicates some of the things that are going on in a slower, more intentional way. It really draws attention to what it is to leave your mark. And a good photographer knows how to capture that essence. Sometimes, with our iPhones and different technology, if you're like me, you can mistakenly capture that. But that's only because of the thousands of photos, and out of them, I get one where it's like, oh, that's the one. But I'm not a photographer. I'm a tradesman. I'm not a magazine editor or a writer. I'm a tradesman. And so those of you who are listening that are tradesmen and feel like, well, I don't know how to tell my story, or how should I tell my story? What should I be doing? Well, you have a medium that you can do that with, whether it's through posting, whether it's through writing, whatever it might be. And it is important that you be about it. So before we keep going, I just want to talk a little bit about the histories of your mark and what it is to leave a mark. And the origins of our country in the frontier times, the phrase became leave your mark. When you would sign a contract or you would make a deal, it would be, well, leave your mark. And a lot of people, they didn't know how to write, or they did know how to write. And they would put in X, and there would be people there that would witness. And that translated into some of the things that we're going to talk about here, and what I believe a brand mark is, and what it is that we do as companies and individuals and people, and how we identify with those things, and how that communicates a story so clearly with just a mark, especially if you're consistent in the story that you tell and the work that you do. So, without rambling anymore, I would like to just start with a story from my origins to share with you from the company that I first founded. So I was an electrician working in another electrical company that I was not in ownership of, or had nothing, to do with guiding the direction of the organization. And one day, an opportunity came about where I went after going out on my own. Here's a little bit about my story and why I think leaving your mark is so important. In the early beginnings of the first company that I founded, it was an electrical construction firm. We did a lot of government work. And I learned a lot of things that I thought were just things that happened in the movies actually still happened in reality. There came a time where, as an organization, we ended up finding ourselves in a courtroom. And I got to be careful how I tell this story, but what I'll say to you is it all came down to a signature on a document. And I signed so many documents that I couldn't remember if I signed this or if I signed that. And that might sound ridiculous to you, but I assure you it is not. And I struggled with the document that was in question because I looked at what it was that I would sign and who I was, and things that I was okay with and things that I wasn't. And one thing that I do have a reputation for is I thoroughly read through the things that I put my name on. That doesn't mean that I catch everything, because I've definitely paid the price of signing documents that I didn't see the fine print, and it cost me dearly. But in this instance, this entire case hinged on my signature on a document that I wasn't sure that I signed. I didn't know how to defend against it. And one day we were in our office, and one of our team members actually was taking a course, a college course in connection just with wanting to continue to be learning. And it wasn't anything that we promoted or anything like that. It was just his personal time, something that he wanted to take, and it was on handwriting. And I learned something very interesting about our signatures, especially if you're someone like me, where you do not necessarily pay a whole lot of attention to how your signature might evolve over time because of the quantity of documents that you sign. And so this young man, one day we were there, and we're going through things, preparing for a deposition. If you know, you know. And as we were talking about different things, I just couldn't get over the fact that I didn't think that I put my signature on this document. But could it be that someone would forge my signature on a document? That seemed ridiculous. And I couldn't even come to the belief that that would actually be something that someone would do, because I couldn't wrap my head around it. It didn't make sense to me. But in this instance, he shared with me, he said, I've been taking this class, and I recently learned that your signature evolves over time, and it actually changes. And I was like, that sounds ridiculous, because I hadn't noticed that my signature evolved over time and would change in that way. To make a long story way simpler and more clear, because we had done government work, we had hundreds, if not 1,000 documents that were certified by the federal government, witnessed and notarized with my signature on them. From the beginning of our company's founding to where we were at this time, which was years and years later. And you were able to clearly see the evolution of the signature. Why do I share this story? I share this story because it brings into the light the importance of your mark and the importance of where you place it. And so that was the end of it. Case closed. It was actually proved that someone had scanned my signature from the future on a document that was much, much older, which was impossible for me to have done. It was a very interesting thing for me to have learned. And so I even pay more attention nowadays to what I sign, but I also pay attention to the mark that I leave on the paper. And that's what I want to talk with you about today. Not only the mark that you leave on paper, but the mark that you leave on the job site. That's why we're doing this experiment. We've collaborated with Wally Adamczyk, and he is sharing with us some of his thoughts on what we call tradecraft, which would be leadership and culture. And so Wally is sharing with us articles and thoughts on the things that he's learned. Just like the story that I told you, he's sharing some of his history, and then also even highlighting some of the organizations that he's worked with that are organizations that their brand, their identity, and where they leave their mark has intention. The other thing that we are doing in this magazine is we are writing articles that we've titled Overtime. And it is about a tool or a piece of gear that we decide to feature, and writing some of the origins and the stats and what it is that comes out of using that equipment or that tool or that piece of gear. And where does it come from, and how does it affect the job that we're using it for? And then we feature a handful of companies and who they are and how they are intentionally leaving their mark and their impact in the industry. How they might be lifting the view of the skilled trades industry. So if you align with that, that's what it's about. Let me just give you a couple of examples of what I mean about leaving your mark. At Blackline, we have a submark. It's right here on this Yeti. And that's something that we identify with. Usually on this podcast, I'm drinking out of a mug that says the line on it. Today, I'm sporting a different mug that I'm drinking my coffee out of that is actually promoting a different podcast, but one that aligns with daily leaving your mark. And if you see it, you know who it is. You know the mug. Don't be a Dilbert. If you know, you know. Another way that brands and trademarks transition, or I would say not trademarks, but when you shift from leaving your mark to being a part of a brand, that's when it becomes more about the organization and less about the individual. You choose a brand to identify with and to align with. Now, this is just my thoughts and my opinions because I don't have a guest here that is sharing in this conversation. But an example would be, I don't think if I show you these sunglasses here, I don't think that it's a question of what brand they might be. They're often called aviators. They're often called, pilot's glasses, made famous by a movie that Tom Cruise was in called Top Gun. Those of you listening probably know by now I'm talking about Ray-Bans. But their brand is their look. It is their feature. Yes, they have their mark on the glasses, but there's no question what they are. This is a hat that I got from an organization called Ideon, and they do gear, and they help organizations and companies put their mark on their gear. Just like this shirt that I'm wearing, they help you communicate who you are identifying with and that your people can communicate in that way. And I love how their mark is just a simple submark. But if you know, you know. I wanted to share with you what we're doing here with Trademark Magazine. I wanted to share with you the importance of story and the importance of being intentional about leaving your mark. When you step out onto the job site, when you step out of your house, when you step out of your truck, wherever you go, the work that you do matters. If you're leading a group of people or you're just showing up to do your job by yourself, people watch, people see, and people notice. I think it's important to acknowledge that even if you don't feel the need to be intentional about what you do and how you do it, you're still leaving your mark. It just might not be the mark that you want to leave. So I encourage you, as this Monday morning, if you're listening to this podcast on a Monday when we drop it, that when you step out onto the dirt, do it with intention. Recognize that the work that you do, even though no one might see it, affects the world that we live in. It affects the lights being on. It affects the water running. It affects, the copper that we put in the walls that transmit the energy. I challenge you to do your work in a way that is intentional and effective in how you leave your mark on what you do, that you might have a positive impact on the people around you today. So if you're interested in actually reading Trademark Mag, you can get yourself a copy by going to our website at blacklineltd.com/trademark. If you're more simple like me and you don't type all those things in, you can just go to our website and you click the hamburger menu up on the top right-hand corner and scroll down and you'll see the line. You'll see the different divisions of Blackline and what we do. But right up there, you'll see Trademark, and you click on that, and we'll send you a copy that you might be able to experience it and see what you think. Lastly, let me leave you with this. We often talk about mistakes that have been made. When I'm interviewing someone, I share with people about well, what's a mistake that you've made? And I'm often asking that question of others. I'll share with you a mistake that I made and how it left a mark. And so the reality is that throughout life, we're going to make mistakes. I believe that if we're not willing to talk about them, if we're not willing to bring them into the light, then we'll never be able to recover from them. We'll never be able to overcome them. When I was a young man and I had founded the business, one of the mistakes that I made was being more of a dictator in how I led people. I actually didn't lead people, I pushed them. You know, someone would be like, well, why should I do that? Well, because I said so, and I'm the boss. And I can remember making that statement, and I was really good at sarcasm, to be quite honest. And so I can remember making a statement to someone on our team, and man, I don't even want to share this because it reveals my ego, so much so. And they're like, well, why do I have to do that? And I said something along the lines of, well, because I signed the checks. And at the time, I didn't realize what that communicated. And it was something that I actually didn't even realize right away. And it became something that I said over and over again. And in specific situations, typically when I got frustrated and didn't understand that I was frustrated and things were coming out of my mouth that shouldn't have been. But what it communicated was, I'm not interested in collaboration. I'm not interested in conversation. I want you to do what I want you to do. And I don't want your feedback. I don't want to know what it is that you might think. That's something that I had to learn the hard way until one day someone came to me and said, you know, you make that statement and it kind of shuts down all communication. It shuts down anything and everything that we might do. And it also communicates that you feel like you're better than us and we're the ones doing the work. I really don't like sharing this with you, except I believe that when people step up to the line and I ask this question, that they're honest with me, and I want to be honest with you. And so I made that change, and it's not something that I say anymore. And I haven't said it for well over a decade. Doesn't mean that I don't tell people to do stuff and explain every detail. It doesn't mean that I don't expect people to be about the tasks that they've been given. But by being more intentional about the words that I use and how I communicate them, even to the level of being aware of when I'm frustrated, if I'm not careful, I'm not always using words that are effective in giving a full context to someone about why we're doing what we're doing, where we're going, and how we're going to get there. I share this with you because I think it is important in the work that we do to be intentional. And the only way to do that is to take the time to pay attention to what you're doing. It takes more work. It costs more. It is harder, and it won't always work the way that you hope it does. But in the long run, it will help you build and leave a mark that is something that you can stand behind. And in that sense, it builds a brand, whether a personal brand, whether a business brand, whether a reputation. It builds each one of those things so that you can be effective in leaving a positive impact on the world that you live in. Have a great day. We'll see you next week.